When the sun sets and the world grows quiet, heaven begins to whisper, "Tonight is not an ordinary night. It is a moment where peace, healing, and breakthrough are waiting to meet you." In the stillness of this hour, God is drawing near, ready to touch every place in your heart that is weary, broken, or burdened. This is your sacred invitation to release control, to surrender your fears, and to step into the supernatural work that only He can do. The night holds power to restore, to heal, to transform, and it all begins with the prayer you are about to offer. Prepare your heart, quiet your mind, and open your spirit, because tonight faith meets miracle, and heaven cannot stay silent. When the night falls and the noise of the world fades away, there is a divine silence that begins to speak. It is in this sacred quietness that the soul finds its truest connection to God. The night is not meant to be a time of fear or anxiety, but a time of renewal, a time when heaven draws near to refresh your weary spirit. When the sun disappears and darkness covers the earth, it is not a sign of absence, it is a divine invitation. God uses the night to whisper what the day was too loud to let you hear. He brings peace to the places in your heart that daylight cannot reach. In the night, faith becomes clearer because distractions are gone. You can finally listen. You can finally feel. You can finally let go of everything that you are holding too tightly. The night is sacred because it reveals how dependent we are on God. When all the lights go out, we realize that He is the only light that truly matters. He uses the darkness to teach you that peace does not depend on circumstances, but on His presence. You may not see what is coming, but you can trust who holds tomorrow. When you rest your head, heaven begins to work on the things that troubled your mind all day. The same God who keeps the stars burning and the moon shining is keeping your life in perfect order. While you sleep, He is arranging, aligning, preparing blessings you haven't even dreamed of yet. The night is His canvas to paint hope again in your soul. Every time you close your eyes in faith, it is like saying, "Oh Lord, I trust You to hold what I can." And that trust becomes the doorway to renewal. So don't fear the quiet. Don't rush through the night. Let it be the sacred time where God renews your strength. The battles of the day may have left you weary, but the night carries healing for the soul. It is when you lie down in surrender that the Spirit breathes peace into your mind. That peace doesn't come from what you see or understand. It comes from who He is. The night is where He restores your confidence, washes away the fatigue, and reminds you that even in darkness, His light never fades. It is in the stillness that you are made strong again. God is not silent at night. He is speaking softly, reassuring you that He is near, that He is in control, that He has already gone ahead of you into tomorrow. Peace begins when you surrender control to God. Most people struggle not because God is absent, but because they are trying to do His job. They carry what only He was meant to carry. But peace is not found in striving, it is found in surrender. It's when you finally say, "Oh Lord, I can't, but You can." That moment of release becomes the turning point. The heart that tries to control everything will always be restless. But the heart that lets God lead will always find peace. True surrender is not weakness, it is wisdom. It's the recognition that the one who formed the universe can handle your life better than you can. Every worry you hold on to is like a wall that blocks peace from entering. But when you surrender, those walls begin to crumble. The Holy Spirit moves freely when the soul is still. God does not compete for control. He waits for you to hand it over. When you release your grip, you give Him permission to work. Peace is not the absence of problems, it is the presence of God in the middle of them. You don't need to understand everything. You just need to trust that He does. When your hands let go, His hands take over. And His hands never fail. Surrender is not a single act, it's a daily decision. Every night when you lay down, choose to release again. Release the fears, the regrets, the plans that didn't go the way you hoped. Tell Him, "Oh Lord, I trust You with this. I give You what I can't control." Then watch how the atmosphere around you shifts. Anxiety loses its grip when faith rises. The mind that was once heavy becomes light. Peace begins to flow like a river. You start to feel the gentle assurance that God has everything under control, even when you don't see how. It's not your job to fix what only God can restore. When you surrender, you make room for His power to work. You allow the divine to replace the human effort. That's when peace enters, not because the storm stopped, but because you found rest in the middle of it. Surrender turns chaos into calm. It changes fear into trust. It transforms the night from something to endure into something safe. The moment you let go is the moment peace begins. Because peace was never lost. It was only waiting for you to stop fighting for control. Prayer is the meeting place between your weakness and God's power. It is not merely words whispered into the air. It is the divine connection that pours heaven into the details of your life. When you pray, you are not reminding God of your needs. He already knows them. You are reminding yourself that you are not alone in them. Prayer changes the posture of your heart. It takes your focus off the problem and fixes it on the provider. It is in prayer that the burden you have been carrying all day begins to lift, and your soul starts to breathe again. Every prayer, no matter how small or broken, reaches the heart of God. He is not impressed by the length of your words, but by the sincerity of your heart. The moment your heart turns toward Him, power begins to move. When you pray, you step into partnership with heaven. You may feel weak, but you are connected to the source of all strength. You may feel empty, but prayer plugs you into the one who never runs dry. Prayer is the greatest equalizer because it takes the impossible out of your hands and places it into God's. The world teaches you to rely on effort, strategy, and control, but the Spirit teaches you to rely on faith. Prayer is not a backup plan. It is the plan. Every miracle that has ever been birthed began with prayer. When you open your mouth in faith, heaven opens its windows. The connection between weakness and divine strength is not accidental, it is intentional. God allows moments of weakness to draw you to the place of prayer. He wants you to know that power flows where dependence lives. The more you depend on Him, the more He reveals His strength through you. Prayer does not always change your situation immediately, but it always changes your position. It lifts you above fear, above confusion, above doubt, into the realm of peace. It gives you eyes to see not just what is, but what can be. When you pray, you are not escaping reality, you are shaping it. You are speaking heaven's will into the earth. You are giving permission for the supernatural to invade the natural. There are times when prayer feels like silence, but even in the silence, something is shifting. God is not ignoring you. He is aligning things you cannot see. Every word of faith that leaves your lips becomes a seed planted in the soil of the Spirit. In due time, that seed grows. You may not see the roots developing underground, but they are. That's why the person of prayer never walks in defeat. They walk in expectation. They know that even when nothing seems to be happening, God is still at work behind the scenes. Prayer keeps the heart alive with hope. Your words carry power because they are born from the Spirit within you. Faith-filled words create the atmosphere for miracles. Every time you speak what God has promised, you are building an environment where His presence can move freely. Words are not just sounds, they are spiritual forces. The same voice that can complain and invite confusion can also declare life and invite miracles. When your mouth agrees with God's word, your world begins to align with His will. That is why you must be careful with what you speak of your life, your home, and your future. Words create worlds. Faith-filled speech is not denial of reality, it is declaration of a higher truth. When sickness says you can't be healed, faith says by His stripes, you already are. When lack says there's not enough, faith says my God shall supply all my needs. When fear says it's over, faith says God is still working. Your words either build faith or feed fear. That's why the spiritual atmosphere around you responds to what you say. Speak doubt and discouragement will rise. Speak faith and miracles will begin to move. When God created the universe, He did it by speaking. Let there be light, and there was light. The same creative power rests inside your words when spoken with faith. You don't have to shout, you just have to believe. Heaven recognizes the sound of faith. It's the sound that moves angels, breaks barriers, and invites breakthrough. Faith-filled words are like divine keys. They unlock doors that have been closed and call forth blessings that have been delayed. Your mouth is a weapon of creation. Use it wisely. When you wake up, speak life into your day. When you lie down, speak peace into your night. When you face opposition, declare victory even before you see it. Faith is not about seeing to believe. It is about believing until you see. Every time you speak according to God's promises, you are painting your future with the colors of faith. You are shifting the spiritual climate around you from fear to favor, from struggle to strength. Prayer and words of faith walk hand in hand. Prayer opens the channel and faith-filled words fill it with power. You may not realize it, but every time you speak hope in a hopeless place, you are inviting heaven to intervene. Every time you declare healing when pain is present, you are inviting divine power to flow. Every time you speak peace over chaos, you are allowing God's authority to settle in your situation. The miracle is often born not in the noise of striving, but in the quiet power of faith spoken in prayer. The Holy Spirit moves most in quiet, trusting hearts. There is a sacred stillness that accompanies faith, a peace that cannot be rushed or forced. When the heart slows down and the soul rests, the Spirit finds room to work. Many people try to control outcomes with their own hands, yet they miss the reality that God's power is released in surrender, not in struggle. The quiet heart listens, the quiet heart obeys, the quiet heart trusts. It is in these moments of trust that miracles begin to take shape. You may not see the movement immediately, but the unseen is already in motion. The Spirit is weaving threads of restoration, blessing, and breakthrough that your eyes cannot yet perceive. Every whispered prayer, every sigh of faith, every quiet act of surrender becomes the atmosphere in which the Holy Spirit can operate freely. Trust is the key. Trust is not passive. It is active dependence on God, believing that He is at work, even when the situation seems unchanged. The trusting heart does not demand to understand, but it leans into the assurance that God knows, God cares, and God acts. When you cultivate trust, you align yourself with divine timing. You begin to recognize that God's delays are not denials. His silence is not absence, and His ways are higher than yours. Trust allows the Spirit to move without hindrance. It removes the resistance of doubt and fear and opens the door for divine intervention. The moment you release control, you create space for God's wisdom, power, and presence to fill your circumstances. Healing flows where forgiveness is released. Many carry burdens of bitterness, anger, and resentment that block the flow of God's power. True healing begins in the heart before it manifests in the body, the mind, or the circumstances. When you forgive, you release chains that have held you captive. You release the weight of the past, and in doing so, you allow the Spirit to move unhindered. Forgiveness is not just an act toward others. It is a declaration of faith toward God. It says, I believe you are just and loving, and I choose to trust your ways rather than cling to offense. In forgiving, you step into a space where healing, peace, and restoration can flow. The heart that holds on to anger cannot fully receive God's blessings. The mind consumed with offense cannot think clearly or hear the gentle whisper of the Spirit. But when forgiveness takes root, the spiritual atmosphere changes. Peace rises where resentment fell. Clarity replaces confusion. Strength replaces weakness. You may not realize it, but the act of forgiving is a powerful alignment with God's purposes. It prepares the soil of your life for breakthrough. Every prayer uttered in a forgiving heart carries weight in heaven. Every sigh of faith released from a reconciled spirit moves mountains. Healing is holistic. It is not limited to the physical. It encompasses the emotional, spiritual, and relational aspects of life. God's intention is complete restoration. The Spirit works to mend every broken part of your being, to knit together what has been torn, to breathe life into what has been weakened. But healing requires openness. It requires a heart willing to release control, to trust God's timing, and to receive what He offers. The process may not always be immediate, but it is certain. The Spirit is faithful to complete the work He begins when the heart yields to Him. Trust and forgiveness work together to create an environment where God's power can move. One cannot flourish without the other. Trust positions you to believe in God's faithfulness even when circumstances are challenging. Forgiveness clears the blockages that would otherwise hinder the flow of His blessing. Together they form a foundation for peace that surpasses understanding and for breakthrough that transcends human effort. A heart that trusts and forgives becomes a sanctuary for the Spirit to dwell, and in that sanctuary, miracles take root. The Spirit moves in alignment with faith. Faith-filled hearts create a resonance that heaven responds to. When your faith is genuine, the Spirit is free to act. He moves in ways that surpass comprehension, in ways that defy natural reasoning, in ways that turn despair into hope, weakness into strength. and limitation into abundance. The quiet, trusting, and forgiving heart becomes a vessel, an instrument through which God's glory is revealed. In this vessel, peace flows, healing manifests, and breakthrough is born. Even in the most challenging nights, the Spirit is working. He is orchestrating events, softening hearts, restoring relationships, and preparing doors of opportunity. The work of the Spirit is often invisible to the human eye, but it is real and powerful. When you cultivate trust, when you release offense, when you wait quietly before God, you are participating in this divine movement. You are aligning yourself with heaven's agenda. You are creating a spiritual atmosphere where the miraculous is not just possible, it is inevitable. Faith does not force God to act, but it positions you to receive His actions. Trusting and forgiving hearts attract the presence of God in ways that busy, anxious, and resentful hearts cannot. The Spirit honors those who yield, who wait, who believe, and who forgive. He moves in subtle, profound, and transformative ways, bringing restoration to what seemed lost, hope to what seemed impossible, and peace to what seemed chaotic. The more you practice surrender, the more you experience the reality of God's power working in your life. Rest, trust, and forgiveness are not passive. They are active expressions of faith that shape your spiritual environment. They are the channels through which the Spirit flows unhindered. They prepare your heart to receive healing in every dimension of your life, to experience peace that cannot be shaken, and to witness breakthroughs that testify to God's faithfulness. The night is a sacred time, the Spirit is at work, and the heart that trusts and forgives becomes a living testimony of God's miraculous power. Rest is an act of faith, not of defeat. In a world that measures strength by activity, choosing to rest can feel counterintuitive, even uncomfortable. Yet the truth is that rest is a spiritual discipline, a sacred acknowledgement that God is in control and that you are not required to carry burdens alone. When you lay down and allow yourself to rest, you are not giving up, you are positioning yourself to receive divine replenishment. Rest creates the space for heaven to operate in ways that human effort alone cannot achieve. Your body, your mind, and your spirit all respond to the invitation to pause, to be still, to trust that God is already working on your behalf. In rest, your faith is exercised in a different dimension. It is a faith that believes even when no visible work is being done. Rest is also preparation. The soul that rests in God gathers strength for tomorrow's challenges. It is during rest that ideas are clarified, decisions become wise, and hearts are renewed. When you resist rest, you are often resisting the very blessings God is trying to send. Your fatigue can cloud your vision, your anxiety can harden your heart, and your overwork can block the flow of the Spirit. But when you surrender to rest, you align yourself with God's timing. You are allowing His power to operate where your strength falls short. Rest is not idle. It is intentional, and it carries a spiritual weight that replenishes and restores. Faith rests before it rises. This principle is essential to understand. Many attempt to force results through sheer will, strategy, or determination, forgetting that God works in His own timing and through His own power. The heart that rests in faith recognizes that waiting is not a weakness, but a strategic act of alignment with heaven. When you trust that God is moving even when nothing seems to change, you are exercising faith at its highest level. You are acknowledging that the Creator of the universe is also the sustainer of your life. While you sleep, while you pause, while you allow mind to quiet, the Spirit is working in ways unseen, arranging, correcting, and preparing what you cannot yet perceive. Breakthrough starts in the unseen before it appears in the seen. There are forces at work in the spiritual realm that are often invisible to the natural eye. Every act of faith, every whispered prayer, every moment of surrender contributes to a chain reaction in heaven that eventually manifests on earth. Many fail to experience breakthrough simply because they look only at what is visible and forget that God's workings often precede natural results. The seed must grow underground before it bursts through the soil. The breakthrough you are longing for is often already moving in the spiritual realm. It is only a matter of time before it becomes tangible. Faith is the bridge between the unseen and the seen. The moment you believe that what is happening in heaven will manifest on earth, you position yourself to receive it. Your expectation and trust create an atmosphere where miracles can thrive. Doubt, fear, and impatience can obstruct this flow. But persistent faith, patient trust, and unwavering hope clear the path for God's power to move unhindered. Breakthrough is not just a sudden change. It is the culmination of spiritual alignment, perseverance in faith, and unwavering trust in God's timing. Spiritual preparation often precedes natural manifestation. Before the miracle appears, the Spirit prepares your heart, refines your character, and tests your faith. This preparation is not punishment. It is an essential process that ensures you are ready to receive and steward the blessing God has planned. The process may include challenges, delays, and even apparent setbacks, but these are designed to align you with the breakthrough to come. Every difficulty is an opportunity to deepen faith, strengthen trust, and cultivate endurance. Patience and rest are active participants in the process of breakthrough. You may feel idle, but spiritually, you are engaged in a powerful exchange. You are releasing control, relinquishing anxiety, and inviting divine orchestration. The Spirit moves freely in a heart that trusts, a mind that is calm, and a soul that is surrendered. When you stop striving and start resting, you open channels for divine intervention that your effort alone could never achieve. Faithful rest is the secret to maintaining peace while preparing for the manifestation of God's promises. Breakthrough often comes when least expected, but the one who rests in faith is always ready. You cannot predict the timing, but you can position yourself through spiritual disciplines, prayer, and trust. The Spirit is constantly at work, even in silence, arranging, softening hearts, and opening doors. Your breakthrough is not contingent on your understanding, it is contingent on your faith. The spiritual realm responds to readiness of heart more than the urgency of human effort. Rest and unseen preparation cultivate an inner strength that cannot be shaken. The calm that comes from trusting God replaces anxiety. The patience that comes from surrender replaces frustration. And the assurance that God is at work replaces doubt. The seeds planted in faith, nurtured in quiet, and watered with trust will inevitably produce fruit. You may not see immediate results, but the process is happening. The breakthrough is growing in the spiritual realm. And every act of resting, trusting, and believing contributes to the final manifestation. Faith, rest, and trust are intertwined in the journey toward breakthrough. You cannot separate one from the other. Rest without faith is mere inactivity. Faith without trust is fragile. Trust without surrender is incomplete. Together they form a foundation for miracles. Your willingness to rest in God's presence, to trust His timing, and to walk patiently through the unseen aligns you with the divine flow of His power. In this alignment, peace is not just a fleeting moment, it becomes a sustaining force. Healing is not just a promise, it becomes an unfolding reality. Breakthrough is not just a hope, it becomes a tangible experience. Gratitude opens the door to divine intervention. It is a principle that is often overlooked, yet it is one of the most powerful spiritual tools available to the believer. Gratitude is not simply a polite response to blessings received. It is a declaration of faith that recognizes God's presence and provision in every circumstance. When you cultivate a heart of thankfulness, you align your spirit with heaven. You begin to see not only what God has done, but also what He is about to do. Gratitude shifts your perspective from lack to abundance, from despair to hope, from doubt to trust. Every act of sincere thanksgiving becomes a key that unlocks new channels of blessing, peace, and breakthrough. The power of gratitude lies in its ability to change your spiritual atmosphere. A heart filled with complaint, worry, or dissatisfaction creates a cloud of heaviness that can obscure God's work. But a heart that continually offers thanks invites His presence to dwell. Gratitude is a form of faith. It says, I trust you, Lord, even when I do not see the outcome. I believe your plan is perfect and your timing is flawless. When you express gratitude in prayer, even for things that have not yet manifested, you are acknowledging God's sovereignty over your life. This acknowledgement is not passive. It is an active force that draws divine intervention into your circumstances. Gratitude transforms perception. When you focus on what is good, on what God has already provided, you create a lens through which blessings multiply. It allows you to see beyond the immediate trials and challenges. You begin to notice the subtle movements of the Spirit, the small signs of provision, the quiet answers to prayer. In this way, gratitude cultivates spiritual awareness. It sensitizes you to the ways God is working in your life, often in ways you would not expect. The simple act of giving thanks in every situation becomes a seed that produces a harvest of faith, hope, and peace. The life of a believer who consistently practices gratitude is markedly different from one who does not. Gratitude breeds contentment even in seasons of waiting. It fosters resilience when facing trials. It strengthens faith because it directs attention toward God's goodness rather than human limitations. When your heart is thankful, your mind is less likely to be consumed by fear or anxiety. Your spirit becomes more receptive to divine guidance. In essence, gratitude is not just a response. It is a posture that invites God's supernatural intervention. Heaven responds to hearts that are thankful. Every prayer that begins with thanksgiving carries weight in the spiritual realm. Angels are dispatched in response to faith-filled gratitude. Doors are opened that seem permanently closed, and favor flows into situations that appeared impossible. Gratitude amplifies your prayers. It magnifies your faith. It prepares you to receive the breakthrough that God has already ordained. The words you speak of thanks are not empty. They are dynamic declarations that move heaven to act on your behalf. When gratitude becomes a lifestyle, it transforms challenges into opportunities. The difficulties that once seemed insurmountable become stages for God's power to be displayed. You start to recognize that every obstacle contains a seed of blessing, every trial a lesson of faith, every delay a preparation for greater provision. Gratitude tunes your spirit to perceive these truths. It trains your heart to rejoice not only in what is visible, but also in what is invisible, in the unseen workings of God that will inevitably produce results. Breakthrough, like peace and healing, often requires spiritual alignment. Gratitude is a key element of that alignment. It positions the heart to receive, to recognize, and to walk in the fullness of God's promises. When you are thankful, you are not just acknowledging past blessings, you are anticipating future ones. You are declaring faith over fear, hope over despair, and victory over defeat. Gratitude creates an environment where God's Spirit can move freely, where His plans can unfold without hindrance, and where miracles can manifest naturally. When morning comes after a night of prayer, gratitude becomes the lens through which you see the day. It prepares your heart to recognize the answers to your prayers, the subtle interventions that may have gone unnoticed, and the open doors that were previously hidden. A grateful heart does not overlook the small victories. It celebrates them, knowing that each one is a step toward greater manifestations of God's favor. Gratitude is the bridge that connects prayer, answered prayer, faith to action, and hope to fulfillment. Angels respond to thanksgiving. Faith grows stronger through acknowledgement. Peace settles over the soul in profound ways. Gratitude is not seasonal. It is a lifestyle. It does not depend on circumstances. It depends on choice. You choose to thank God not because everything is perfect, but because He is perfect. You choose to give thanks not because life is easy, but because He is your strength. This choice opens the door to divine intervention, spiritual breakthroughs, and a deeper, more intimate walk with God. When you practice gratitude consistently, it affects every area of your life. Relationships improve because a thankful heart is a humble heart, ready to forgive and to love. Decisions become clearer because a thankful heart trusts God's wisdom. Challenges lose their power because a thankful heart is focused on God's provision rather than human limitation. Gratitude produces fruit that ripples outward, affecting not just your life but the lives of those around you. The unseen impact of a grateful heart is profound, shaping circumstances, influencing people, and aligning situations with God's perfect will. When you thank God for what you have, you are also preparing to receive what He has promised. Every act of thanksgiving is a spiritual declaration that you believe God is faithful. It is a sign that you are aligned with His purposes and receptive to His timing. This alignment opens the doors for peace to enter where there was anxiety, for healing to flow where there was pain, and for breakthrough to manifest where there was stagnation. Gratitude is both a spiritual posture and a practical key, unlocking the abundant life that God desires for you. When you combine gratitude with faith, rest, trust, and surrender, you create a powerful atmosphere for miracles. Your heart, mind, and spirit work together to align with heaven. Every act of prayer, every word of faith, every moment of thanksgiving becomes a building block in the foundation of your breakthrough. You may not see it immediately, but spiritual laws are at work. Gratitude ensures that you are in position to recognize and receive the fullness of God's intervention. The heart that continually offers thanks becomes a sanctuary for God's presence. Peace resides there, healing flows there, and breakthrough is birthed there. Gratitude transforms ordinary nights into sacred encounters, ordinary prayers into powerful declarations, and ordinary hearts into vessels of divine power. It is the key that opens doors, the light that guides steps, and the force that moves heaven to act. Every day, every moment, every breath of thanksgiving positions you for the blessings, restoration, and miracles that God has prepared. Angels are attentive to thanksgiving. Heaven responds to faith-filled gratitude, and the Spirit moves freely in hearts that recognize God's hand in every circumstance. When you sleep in gratitude, you rest in peace. When you wake in gratitude, you rise in strength. When you live in gratitude, you walk in victory. Gratitude is not just a habit. It is the language of faith, the gateway to miracles, and the pathway to divine intervention. Every time you choose thankfulness, you are choosing alignment with God's power, and that alignment is the soil from which breakthrough, healing, and peace naturally grow. As we close this time of prayer, remember that peace begins when you surrender control to God. Prayer is the bridge between your weakness and His strength, and faithful words create an atmosphere for miracles. The Spirit moves most freely in quiet, trusting hearts, and healing flows where forgiveness is released. Rest is an act of faith that positions you for breakthrough, and every act of gratitude opens the door for divine intervention. When you combine trust, surrender, prayer, and thanksgiving, you align yourself with God's power in ways that the world cannot explain. Tonight, as you lay down to rest, carry this truth in your heart. Heaven is already at work, arranging, restoring, and preparing what your eyes cannot yet see. Your breakthrough is coming, your peace is settling, your healing is flowing, and your faith is rising. Sleep in faith. Rise expecting miracles. Heaven is moving and your breakthrough has already begun.